Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Because the guilt of the people who were lost and left over there, and they don't want that attention. So there's just so many layers, and you're in this juxtaposition of he's a hero, but he's also an abuser. And how do you talk about that? And I'm making myself an enemy to military men. I know there are men who may have heard the first episode or second episode and been like, screw her, she doesn't get it. But I'm coming from a position of very much wanting to save them from themselves. You know, someone I've been having a lot of conversations with, the sweetest lady in the world. Uh, I'll use her first name. Her first name's Stacy, and her son was out of the Fifth Special Forces, out of Kentucky, and he actually ended up killing his wife, his pregnant wife. Well, two kids, toddlers were watching, and she's the sweetest lady in the world. And she calls me now because she wants to brag about her son to someone, and I'm empathetic because I can see exactly how it happened. And she'll cry and say his first wife went to the military and begged for help, and they deployed him. His second wife went to the military police, all these things, and begged for help, and now she's dead. And thank God the little girl lived, and thank God that soldier called 911 and said, "We need help." They were able to save the baby, but he lost his wife, and now he's in Leavenworth for the rest of his life. And I promise you, if given the opportunity to go back and get help, and you also may get in trouble, but I say, isn't it better that you get it may come with some reprimand that you're going and saying, I've done these things or whatever, but fine. If that can get the attention to you needing severe help instead of you getting deployed, like I bet you every day that man would trade that over and over again to not have 3 orphan kids, you know?
So this is going to sound really strange that I'm asking this, but I'm not
Mhm.
known for not asking strange questions,
Same. That's why we get along so well.
right? I'm a little weird.
I like it. Okay.
Is there a way that you could interview him?
I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying. I'm talking to his mom because my ultimate goal for him, and it's so hard, Mike, because so many of my listeners are victims of domestic violence. And it's
Yeah.
like, why is she giving this guy a platform? But he has to have a seat at the table if we're going to fix the problem.
Well,
You
that's the
cannot
point.
help the wives if you
That's what
don't
I'm
help.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
If you
trying very
can,
hard to figure out how I can.
yeah,
Imagine me telling my husband now, I'm
yeah,
going to Leavenworth.
right,
You watch the kids. It's
right.
fun. He wouldn't even bat an eyelash. He'd be like, of course you are. Of course. He's the
Yeah,
logic. I'm the,
right.
but
Now,
I'm
I know
trying.
Mike, and Mike
I'm
wouldn't be the
trying.
least bit surprised.
He wouldn't be surprised. I don't know that he'd love it. He's like, every day, that poor man, the things I tell him, he's all logic and he just kind of nods. He's exactly what I need because I'm the wild one and he's the logic.
Yeah,
Um, I'm
you
trying
guys
very
are
hard.
perfect
I want to
together.
go see him. Thank you. I really want to go see him because I think that he can add some encouragement. My hope for him, he's going to be
Mhm.
in jail for the rest of his life. And
Yeah,
there's 2 things that can happen to him. And by the way, he had a very traumatic childhood. His mom has shared that he was the victim of domestic violence in his own home.
yeah,
So my hope for this man is that he can become a voice for those armed forces members, encouraging them to get help, and he can find a reason to get up every day. And maybe someday his 3 kids, I can't say whether they'll forgive him. That's nothing I could add insight to. That's insane to even think about. But maybe someday he can forgive himself,
mhm,
get right with God or whoever is his higher power, whatever, and have helped people, or he can sit in jail and become more and more and more angry and rageful. But I hope he finds a purpose through this and
yeah,
he can't bring back Megan and he
yeah,
can't give his children back their mother. But maybe he can help someone else out there from killing their wife and getting help earlier when they're realizing he knew he was in distress. He knew.
yeah.
And, military police were involved, a lot was involved, but that's the conversations I'm having with his mom is how can we help him? And it just people around me, friends and family are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Everyone has to have a voice in this." And I'm going to be hated by the wives and I'm going to be hated by the victim's family and I'm also going to be hated by the military men, but I didn't start this podcast to make friends, I started it to make a change.
Well, I feel like there's a lot of courage here on your part.
Or stupidity.
I'm also
We're
I'm
not sure yet.
also I'm also a huge fan of hindsight being 2020.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah, we
I'm a
live, we
big
learn.
fan of talking to people that have been through these types of just traumatic events,
Mhm.
because I guarantee you, you're absolutely right. He can look back at this and say, you know what? I should have done this. If I had it to do over again, this is what I would do. And I would love for you to ask him. I know you're going to, but I would love for
Yeah.
you to ask him that question and let him tell you what that is.
Yeah.
And by the way, I would love for you to do this with not just him. Do this with other warriors that have been through this. And I'm talking people that are incarcerated and some that are not.
Yeah.
Have a conversation with them, because everybody has a different take, right? Everybody has a different way of looking at this. And the biggest thing that I think you're doing is, I think you're bringing awareness to something that just needs awareness. It needs the kind of attention that you're bringing to it. And I'm going to give you an example of something that happened that really rocked my world. We left Afghanistan a few years ago, and there was a suicide bomber that killed 13 of our service members. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Shook me.
Congressman Darrell Issa did a um did an event where he brought the families in, and
Mhm.
they got a chance to talk, because they hadn't had a chance to talk. Nobody was talking to them. Nobody was listening to these people. And they got a chance to talk about their warrior. They got a chance to talk about what happened to them. They got a chance to talk about what the DoD's response has been. They got a chance to talk about how the current administration hasn't even recognized them, let alone, given them any time or talked with them or met with them or anything. Okay.
Yeah.
And and by the way, unconscionable, absolutely unconscionable, the response that they received from the Pentagon, that they received from the DoD, that they received from the current administration.
Well, they're not getting an apology because people then feel like they're taking responsibility in it,
Well,
which it's all
I'm not even
being
concerned about an
politicized.
apology. I'm
Yeah,
not
or
even
like
concerned about an
an
apology.
acknowledgement rather.
I'm concerned about
Nothing.
checking your watch during the dignified transfer. I mean,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? I mean, this
Yeah.
is just callous.
I was just gonna say callous.
Yeah, it's just awful. Okay.
Yeah.
And I get it. People die every day. People, we have service members that die every day in service to this country. Okay.
Mhm.
The fact that they're defending this great nation means something to me. Anyway, they did this at city council chambers in Escondido, and
Mhm.
they happened to invite me, and I went, and it rocked my world.
I would have loved to go to that.
It
Yeah. It's
completely rocked my. If I wish you could have been there, because it was, to say it was compelling is an understatement. Okay.
yeah.
And I sat with a former chief of police from the Escondido Police Department. He literally sat right in front of me. He and I got a chance to talk. We got a chance to get to know each other. He's going to be on the podcast, right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
The thing is, it affected him even more than it affected me. And he's, probably 70 something, right? I'm 57, but I'm a dad,
Yeah.
and I'm a
You're
dad of a
coming to it through
son,
the lens of a
yeah,
parent.
who's
Yeah.
25 years old, didn't serve in the military, okay? But it broke my heart.
Mhm.
And to me, the reason why this thing with ISA was so important was because it gave these people a voice that they didn't have.
Yeah.
Somebody finally listened to them, and they needed somebody to listen,
Yeah.
you know? That hurt is real, and it's a what you're doing is similar to what he did that day that I feel like was absolutely invaluable. These so these things happen, and then everybody goes on with their lives.
Mhm.
What you're doing is bringing awareness to something that we can, in fact, correct. We can lessen the impact. We can lessen the misery. There is a way, like that chaplain that I sent to you, right?
Yeah.
There's a way through love, okay? There's a way through love and through skill and dedication, the whole thing, to get to this. There's a way to lessen this. There's a way to have an impact that I feel like has to happen. And so this podcast that you're doing, and I've told you how proud I am of you, but what you're doing is major,
Thank you.
and it has to happen.
Well, the biggest challenge is I'm bringing on experts in domestic violence, right? So some episodes are going to be heavily focusing on the abuse that the women are enduring. And no military member is going to want to listen to that, right? Because I'm essentially calling these I'm saying shining a very negative light on the service member. And then the next episode may be talking to an expert on PTSD, and we're shining a light on we're not talking about the victims. And so it kind of bounces back and forth. I almost need to label it like this one's for the wives, this one's for
Mhm.
the service member, because I do bounce back and forth, but I don't, I want to help everybody.
Yeah.
And one of the things about these soldiers who are suffering the most is, and I'll go back to the gentleman, I'll go back to the man in, I'll go back to the guy we talked about earlier whose wife died. Everybody people showed up at his hearing and testified on behalf of how he was the backbone of
Mhm.
their unit, and he was the one everyone went to, and he counseled them when they were struggling. And
Mhm.
so I was talking to my second episode, I was talking to, Doc Springer, Doc Shauna Springer. She's a Yale or sorry, I'm messing up now. Edit this out. I was talking to Dr. Shauna Springer. She's a Harvard graduate and she is a clinical psychologist. And she
Mhm.
was the senior advisor on suicide prevention in military members. And she is an expert on PTSD. And she now has the Stella Center, which has these awesome treatment centers. But she said the people who suffer the greatest are usually those who are counseling others and they
Mhm.
suffer in silence and they take on the brunt of it and they don't get help.
Yeah.
And that ties into what my friend was saying, who is on the medical boards for these guys. She's saying they're not asking for help. The guys coming in at 2 years are usually the young airmen who are like, I'd like to get out and get disability. Like,
Mhm.
I have PTSD. The programs are there. The men are not asking for help.
Mhm.
And I've even had some backlash from military wives emailing me and saying it's dangerous to say that these men shouldn't get help because it's going to make them not want to. They're not. They're the members who are these combat men. They're not going in until they're severe and they're ready to get out. They're not going in at year 4 and saying you need to start the help now. So
Mhm.
it's just become this grandiose problem, and I'm probably going to tick off everyone on all sides, and I'm okay with that. I've got
Yeah.
thick skin. I'm okay with that. I just want to help the wives and help the soldiers, because if we don't help them, we can't help the wives.
You're not gonna get anywhere if you don't tick everybody off.
Yeah,
There's
unfortunately.
there's go I mean, honestly, right? There's gonna be backlash, and there's going to be that's what's so courageous about what you're doing is you've been there,
Mhm.
you've experienced this, and now you're giving a voice to something that nobody's really giving a voice to. Nobody's shining a light on the things that you're shining a light on. And we're only going to get to this awareness, and we're only going to get to where this becomes something real
Yeah.
by getting out there and making a few people mad and making a few people
Yeah.
uncomfortable. If all we do is stay in our comfort zone and we let everybody else stay in their comfort zone, that nobody's going to ever get anywhere.
Yeah. It's
It's just
true.
like it's just like a muscle, right? You own a gym. It's just like a muscle. You've
Yeah.
got to work that muscle, and yeah, it's going to get sore, and yeah, it's going to be mad at you, and all that kind of stuff, right? But it's not going to grow if you don't work it. If you don't get somewhere uncomfortable and get out of your comfort zone in terms of whatever weight you were lifting, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get there. And that's what's so unbelievably amazing about you is you're taking this on knowing that you're walking into fire, you know?
Yeah.
It's fire you have to walk into though. I mean, it
That's
literally
how we
has to
bring about
happen.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Making changes
it's
isn't easy.
yeah, and
Yeah.
this is this is a it's kind of like the Agent Orange thing. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Agent Orange, Agent Orange, Agent Orange, right? And nothing happened. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. But enough people talked enough about the suffering, and enough people talked about enough about sort of the callousness of let's drop all this on the troops because we're clearing brush, right?
Right.
We're going to drop all this on the troops. My father-in-law had it dropped on him,
I remember you saying that.
and
Yeah.
he's seeing a doctor every 6 months because they're watching him. They're watching these strange things that are happening in his chest, and they're watching to see if that had an effect on him, right? Because he literally had it rain down on him and
Yeah.
thousands of other people.
Yeah,
Like,
unfortunately, they're trying to the greater good is what they're looking at, but they're
yeah,
not looking at the micro level of the effects on these soldiers and their
yeah.
family and generational trauma that now, you know, this soldier had this happen in 2010, we will still see the effects of his grandchildren in 2080 if there isn't some changes made along the way and some therapy and all these different things. It's just affecting generations. So someone's got to get uncomfortable and talk talk from both sides.
Somebody's got to be willing to bear the slings and arrows, right?
Yeah.
Of outrageous fortune, right?
Yeah.
This is one of those things where you've got to be willing to walk through fire to make this happen. And you are. And that's part of the reason why I had to have you on here and I had to have you tell your story. Really quickly, I want to talk about something that you shared with me
Yeah.
that we haven't talked about. And the reason I want us to talk about it is after you told this to me, it kind of rocked my world. Like I went out and got in my truck and drove away and I was like, "Okay, we need to talk about this. People need to hear this." There was an incident where your ex-husband, it was your husband at the time, he had been deployed dozens of times, it sounds like, or over a dozen times.
He'd been deployed so many times. He had people in his unit who had like 12, 13 deployments under their belt. So yeah,
Yeah,
just quite a bit.
yeah. And something went down and it was bad. And you ended up leaving the house and you had no credit card, no driver's license,
Nothing.
no, no, right, nothing, right? You like walked
Yeah.
out with the shirt on your back
Yep.
and you called command. So tell this story because you're way better at it than I
There's
am. But
well,
it
there's honestly like there's several situations like that where there happened. There was one where he was deployed and he was is this the one where he was deployed and he was threatening suicide? He called me on a satellite
well,
phone and said
actually,
he
I'd
was
like to
gonna
tell that one too. But there
Yep,
was
yep.
another one where he came back
Oh, yep.
and he came and it got bad and you ended up running for your life. And you
Oh,
ended up having to get on the
there's
phone with command and going, "Is can somebody go over there and get my driver's license?" I mean, it's just like
Yeah, yeah. So there's actually
broke my
several like this.
heart to
It
hear
it
it.
it became quite a pattern, and a lot of military wives experience this, where there was a fallout. I mean, there was so many fallouts, but there was one where oh, he would just lose it, and I would flee for my safety, and
Yeah.
I got to the point where I had to hide a key so I could run out the back door and jump in my, Jeep and drive off, but I kept spare, like, d and I was so monitored in everything I do. My cards to the point where people wonder how that happens, but when the reaction to an $8 charge is so huge, it
Mhm,
changes your behavior. You go, "I won't buy anything without his permission. I won't do these
mhm,
things." So there were several where he would just lose it, and one time I can remember he had a knife in the kitchen, and he just stabs this, like, formica countertop, and I remember I'm standing there, and he'd been threatening me, and he stabs the countertop breaks, he cuts his hand, he's raging, and I end up grabbing the dog and going out through the window, out the door, getting in my car, fleeing. I don't have money, I have no access to money, I'm not even wearing shoes, I have nothing, and I called his command because he had been threatening suicide and said, like, "Hey, this is happening," And this is what happened every time. They basically give him like a 12-hour monitoring, and then they're like, guns returned, you're good to go. We've diffused the situation, but they deployed him right after that,
Mhm.
because instead of addressing that there needs to be some deep therapy, it was like, well, let's get him back out there, and they'll be separated for 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever have you. The wife can go home, she can live in her house. But then on that deployment, he actually got shot, and he lived, but he actually got shot. And so I was at that time, I was going to school because I really realized that my education was going to be my salvation. I'd be able to
Yeah.
leave with a company that would offer me a salary and insurance, because you lose your TRICARE when you're not married to them, and all of these things. I wanted that. And so I was working on that, and I was planning on leaving. And I got a call that he'd been shot, and I wasn't going to leave him. I was going to nurse him. He lived. He went to Walter Reed. Blood clot, all kinds of things happened. But and what you're not gonna leave, because it's not a lack of love for these
Yeah.
wives. There's not a lack of love. It's a safety, and there's no improvement, and it's only getting worse. And if I don't leave, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And so there's like several situations from what we've talked about, but it was always, I'm in my car. If I did have my ATM or my driver's license, I would go to an ATM right away and try and get money out for gas, or I would always sleep in my car. I wouldn't go to a hotel. He'd put GPSs on my car, track me, all of these things, shut off my phone. And so mostly I was driving somewhere different every time, and just sleeping in my car until he came down. And
Yeah.
the phone would have 20, 30, 40, 50 texts that range from threatening my life to the police calling me because he's reported me as XYZ, to then the next day, like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know how I get, please come home. So it
Mhm.
was always waiting for him to diffuse. But what happened is those incidences got closer and closer. They went from every 3 weeks when we got together to every 3 days, to at the end, it was hourly, to where it's
Yeah.
like, I'm afraid to speak. I'm afraid to do anything. And so one of those nights where he was, waving threat and all these things, I went out the window with my dog and I left, and I never went back. I mean, it was
Yeah.
literally the middle of the night. I left. And when it was really, I realized how imperative it was going to be for me to leave. I always went back, and one of his coworkers found me. And I don't want to divulge too much about him, because I don't want anyone to figure out who it was, because he found me and said, I'm worried for your life. He's not okay, and you need to leave. What do you need to do that? And I said, I need to get my driver's license, my birth certificate, my social security card, so I can start my life somewhere else. I need to get out
Mhm.
of here. And he said, here's some gas money. I'm going to go to work tomorrow. And when he gets to the base, I'm going to call you. You're going to run to your house. You're going to get those things. And then I'm going to call you. And we lived right across the street from base, like throw a
Yeah.
rock and hit base, not on base, but right across. And so I was waiting a couple miles away, and the phone rang from this person. He said, "Go now." I ran to the house. I got inside. I grabbed, like, my mom's an artist. I grabbed some of her artwork. I grabbed social security card, the things that I need, and then my phone rings and he's like, "Go, go, go, go." He just left base. And so I
Mhm.
just peeled out of there, and my school let me graduate early. There's a lot of people who were really cheering me on and helping me, but it was a
Yeah.
really scary time in life. And the thing is, people don't realize it's not a lack of love. You're not even
Mhm.
leaving because you hate someone. It's just
Mhm.
sheer fear and safety, and those incidences were happening every day. The last couple months we were together, I slept in my car probably 3 months, and it was not gonna be okay, but I really thought, "I'm gonna leave and he's gonna get help." And unfortunately, I left, and he got married within, like, a year,
Mhm.
maybe 2 years, and had a baby with him. She's now one of my best friends. But it only got worse, and he deserved better. She deserved better. Their kids deserved better. I deserved better. Every party involved. I feel like the military is failing their soldiers, because they're looking at the greater good of we're just going to send them back into war. We need them. We need them. And if we don't fix this, it's already an epidemic. But if we don't change this, it's just going to continue to get worse, and we're going to see this so many generations down the road of trauma.
That's why what you're doing is so incredibly important.
Thank you, Mike.
Absolutely incredibly important.
Yeah.
So I cannot thank you enough
Thank you.
for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been amazing. What's the name of your podcast?
Yeah, the name of my podcast is "The Wounds That Do Not Heal." It's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Castbox, basically everywhere you get your podcasts. Either look up Tressa Brady or "The Wounds That Do Not Heal." And I do want to mention, and this might be someone really cool for you to interview, Mike, but the StellaCenter.com. I'm not affiliated with them, but they have some really amazing things that they're doing for war fighters and their spouses. And I've already had people reach out to me that they're seeking treatment there. But look up, if anyone is affected by this, look up the stellacenter.com. They have amazing new therapies. Dr. Eugene Lipoff is He's a pain management doctor who's found some ways, a treatment that's been around for over since 1920, but they're seeing some really amazing things in the warfighter community and their spouses by using some of these treatments. So I encourage anyone struggling with PTSD or depression to look up thestellacenter.com.
So Stella as in Stella.
Yes.
Okay. And Tressa is Tressa.
Tressa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brady, like Brady Bunch. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So check out the Stella Center. They have amazing resources. And so I try to send everybody there. You need to interview Dr. Eugene Liphoff. He's amazing. He's doing some really cool things.
I would love to. So The Wounds That Do Not Heal.
Correct.
Is the podcast.
Yes.
Tressa Brady.
That's me.
I'm one of your biggest fans.
Oh, likewise. Thanks
for being here. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.